Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion. Those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book, and today's book is going to be really a series that I'm going to be reviewing, and that is the Wicked and Divine series, which is a graphic novel series done by several artists there's just several artists working on this project. So I'm going to be doing a series review of all 6 volumes that are available at present. I'm of course not going to try to get into anything super spoilery or anything like that. I just want to give my feelings and opinions on this and like how I believe that a reader should approach this after having read all of these 6 volumes and then reading some reviews and responses to this particular graphic novel series. So I'm holding up the very first volume in the series. This series, if you're not familiar with it, takes place in a world where gods are something very commonplace. There is a pantheon of 12 gods that are rebirthed every 90 years, and for those 2 years in which they are gods, they are loved, they live, they inspire, but at the end of that 2-year period, they die. This is a pantheonic cycle that continues every 90 years. Now, the gods we see of all these pantheons can be from all different mythos, so we really just get a diverse cast of different gods and characters, and we are slowly learning more about how this pantheon came to be and what are the goals and responsibilities of this pantheon. So we are following one girl whose name I actually can never remember, and she is very, very invested into these gods because a lot of the times these gods work as performers because they really are like muses and entertainers for the rest of the world. So she goes to a lot of these different concerts, and she really gets involved into this god life by becoming like personal friends of several of the gods. And this is a story of how like she's figuring out more about the pantheons, more than you could if you were just typing online, and then learning more about like what is going on, because there is definitely something under the surface, something more menacing that is threatening these gods, and they have to figure it out if they want to survive, at least until their 2 years are up, right? So I really like this series. I feel like if you have a fondness towards pantheonic gods, towards gods in general and pantheonic stories, you'll really like this. This does really give you an intriguing view of like what's it like to have a character who is a god. Well, these gods are a little bit different because like they are born as human and then they're awakened as gods, so like they have past memories of just being your Joe Blow on the street. They now have like this higher thought process and like higher being of being gods and having these amazing powers, and now this time limit to their goddom. So I really like the exploration of each god and like the way that they perceive themselves and those around them, because like a god wouldn't think like a human, and it becomes very clear as you go through like how differently all of these gods think. And even when you get to see them and what they were like before they were gods, you really do get a feel for like how different they are as gods, and it's very interesting to see these characters who are gods, because you're just like, how am I supposed to relate as a human being? Now, when I think of approaching this series as the series that it is, I really do think that this is a series that is best read with all of the volumes available to you. I do think that the series sort of loses a little luster the longer you wait to read each volume, if you aren't a person who just like can remember and pick up on things like real easily. I do think that this is a series best enjoyed if you read the volumes in like close succession, like maybe not one after another, but you at least have the previous volume close in mind. Now, the reason why I say this is because something a little bit weird happens right in the middle of the series, and that is called book number 3. And book number 3 does not really follow along the same lines and the same storyline as these ones, where it is following the girl and her understanding and becoming closer to all of these different gods. Book number 3 is really a volume of like backstory and history on all of the different gods that are in the pantheon and that you have met, so it really gives a different feel. Plus, every different story is drawn by a different artist, so it really is drawing to go into that 3rd volume and then see all of these characters drawn by a completely different artist and it not following the same storyline. Now, you have 1 and 2 that follow the main storyline, volume 3 that goes off and is kind of like the footnotes of the series, and then volumes 4, 5, and 6 that once again progress with the main series. Now, I feel like, once again, the series, you read it all chronologically, right? You read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all chronologically, but if you're going back and rereading this because you just got your hands on volumes 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, maybe skip volume 3 and then read just the main story, and then you'll get more enjoyment out of the main story if you're just going by the main story arc, right? So volume 3 is kind of like, it's a tricky volume because it's necessary for the story, and I'm not saying don't read that volume because it really does give you a really in-depth view to a lot of these different characters, and a lot of stuff that is referenced in volume 3 does come back later. However, for the point of understanding the main story plotline, volume 3 is not necessary and kind of can take you out of that story. So I think for like the reviews that I've been seeing where they are showing a distaste for volume 5 and 6, I think volume 5 and 6 and the whole plot and the whole menace that is going on and really trying to attack the gods makes a lot more sense and still feels like it's going somewhere if you have all of the volumes very fresh in your mind. Because I've been seeing a lot of like reviews about like volumes 5 and 6 not really living up to their potential, not really like doing enough to explain. And while I can see those arguments and can see that they're completely valid, I think it's more of like a distance and you waiting too long. Because if you're coming at the story as it is not a story with traditional characters, because it is a story about gods, you really understand why it has such a weird pacing maybe, and why the characters' actions are not as predictable because they are gods. So I do think that this is a very great series. I do suggest that if you're planning to read this and this might be something you're interested in, definitely just read all the way through as much as you can and read with the previous volume close at mind, because that will make the reading experience more enjoyable for you. And definitely keep in mind that you are not necessarily supposed to relate to any of these characters. This is a story about a pantheon, and if you're familiar with gods and pantheons, you know that they don't always make the most logical or best decisions, and sometimes they just do crazy, unpredictable things, and that really becomes apparent in volumes 5 and 6, where you're dealing with a lot more godness and god stuff going around. So I like this. I think it's worth your time. However, this is something that I would say only if you have a really strong interest in pantheons, and only if like you really understand that maybe gods are not the best character relation for you, because there's going to be a lot of things that happen with like some of these gods. You're going to be like, I thought you were a chill dude, but it turns out you're not as chill as I thought. And then you're just like, oh yeah, you're a god, what did I expect sort of feeling. So that is it for this review. If you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click on those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.